welcome back. I'm Abi Roberts. This is the Abi Roberts Show here on TNT. And I'm very excited because I've got a fantastic guest. It is the leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin. Welcome, David.
Hi, thank you so much. It's really good to be with you on your new show.
Oh, yeah, it's very exciting. And David, you said you've got a jacket on. You've made an effort, at least. I, on the other hand, look like I've rolled out of bed. But that's the way I roll. No filters, literally no filters on me. So before we crack on with so the Heritage Party, wonderful party. I've met you on a load of the marches. You were the only politician on any of the. We'll get to this in a bit. On the what I call the smaller parties who bothered to turn up to all the marches against the lockdowns and the vaccines. So for that, sir, you should be given the highest honour alone. Before we crack on with the chat, I'm going to ask to play the first clip, which is of Richard Tice and Dr. David Bull chatting. If we could play
there are
that
a couple of things I'm very worried about. One is the low uptake of vaccine by BAME communities, and we just really need to emphasise to them that this is really important.
Yep.
And the other thing is about caregivers. They really must be vaccinated, because otherwise they're putting elderly and vulnerable people at risk.
Well, it's absolutely critical to their job, surely. I mean,
it is.
I don't see how they can do the job if they're not prepared to be vaccinated.
And of course, you see in the UK, we don't believe in compulsory vaccination. Now, you can argue whether that's the right or wrong thing, but the one thing I will tell you is there's no way you're travelling abroad without a vaccine, because the airlines are going to demand it, and so are other countries.
But there are many jobs where actually a certain level of training or ability is required to do the job. And surely, if you're going to be a care worker, then you must be vaccinated in order to protect the residents.
Yeah.
And that was Richard Tice, who is leader of the Reform Party, and Dr. David Bull, his shilling, traitorous doctor friend. David, let's talk about so your heritage. Let's talk about that party that seems to be gaining some kind of traction. I'm not really sure why, and your views on the COVID and the vaccines.
Well, the clip you showed, I've seen it a number of times, and it's absolutely deplorable, isn't it? They were just following the mainstream line, the government line, the line which has been pushed out by all the nudge units and behavioural psychology units to try to get people to take what they call a vaccine, I call an experimental injection. And particularly what is so odious about that is they're talking about the care home workers and the no jab, no job regulations that were rolled out later by the government, and 40,000 plus care home workers lost their jobs. And I don't say this very often, but I did actually work for the Workers of England Union as a representative at the time, and they were the only union that was actually willing to support care home workers and the attack on them by the government. And then they also got the care homes to attack their livelihoods. I actually managed to keep some care home workers their jobs, but sadly some of them didn't, and they were distraught. So I know people personally who were affected by that, and there you've got Tyson Bull just spouting off this stuff about how they shouldn't be allowed to go to work. And you think they're the saviors of the country. No, absolutely not. They're the exact opposite of that.
Yes, exactly, David. I'm so glad because I was thinking, when I watched that clip again, because obviously there's a few clips like that. It's not just that one in 2021. I mean, we're talking. There's a few where Richard Tice is saying things about the vaccine, about your experimental injections, as you quite rightly say. And yet, why are people's standards so low? What is it about people's? Have they got amnesia, David, about what these people have said over the last 3 years?
I think there's different kinds of people. I mean, there's people like us who actually see through it and are never going to go and trust them because they remember what happened. But then you've got, what I would call normies who've got very short memories. And, what happened a month ago, they don't even think about it. They just forget it. And they just, go with the flow of whatever is served up to them today by the mainstream media. Those people, some of them are bad people. Some of them are good people. But really, they need to engage their brain a little bit more and have a little bit more critical thinking about what's going on, because we are in a dire situation at the moment in this country and all around the world. I mean, especially in the Western world, our freedom, our democracy is under attack like never before, and people have really got to get involved in the thing that is going to stop our civilization from being crushed to the ground.
Yes, exactly. And what are your sort of thoughts about the next? So we'll play the next clip in a little bit. I just want to ask you though what your thoughts are on how we get out of this without involving the likes of Tice, and I'm going to include Farage in this. I call them sort of, well, they're part of the establishment, are they? They're part of the what I call the suits. You know, the guys in dark suits who just are from. They're all the same. Whereas I see you as very much like someone who broke away and went, no, these are my principles, these are my morals. This is a new kind of politics that we're having here.
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing, because I got involved in politics, first of all, in 2012, 2013, and I joined UKIP, you know, and Farage was the leader of UKIP at that time, and I was very starry-eyed about him then, because, you know, the things that got me interested and I needed to get involved in was the EU, where that was going, and political correctness and how that was already taking away our freedoms. But, you know, I've seen through that now, and, you know, now I see this new party, whatever, it's Reform as it's called. It really is a Tory pressure valve, to be honest. You know, the fake Conservatives, as I call them, are crashing into the ground. People are so disgusted with them, you know, about immigration, about how they've wrecked the economy, about what they're doing to our energy infrastructure following all this climate alarmist net zero narrative. So Reform is there as a pressure valve, and it's you know, it's being puffed up constantly and incessantly by mainstream media channels, you know, including, you know, some that I've appeared on before and you've appeared on before, that I guess will remain famous. You know, I'm puffing them at the moment. But we're being sidelined, you know. I mean, I've now written the manifesto, the Heritage Party manifesto, in terms of positive principles that I think we need for the country. And, you know, but I don't get cancelled. I just get ignored. You know, I don't get much traction on the mainstream. There's like, they don't even say anything about us because it's like they don't want people to even hear our name. But the name of the Heritage Party is getting out through social media, you know, through talking to you and other people, you know, who really know what's going on. So this is what we need. And people need to understand the differences between the different challenger parties.
Yes, and do you think that, and I know you've heard this, we've both heard this argument before, that people need to join together? I know you've probably heard all this, you know, Reform, Heritage. What's the other one? Reclaim, that I used to be involved with until Lawrence Fox went completely off the rails. But anyway, that's one of those things, you know, like you said, you have a journey, don't you, with these things, and then you suddenly end up where you need to be. So what are your thoughts on that, on the amalgamation of the parties?
Look, I get asked this a lot, and it's a very good question. You know, people want to know this because, you know, if you don't actually look at the manifesto and, you know, look into things, you might think, oh, well, they're all the same if you just see one or two key words, you know, immigration or something. But no, I think we are very, very different to the others. And, you know, you've mentioned two specific parties there. So Reform, you know, we talked about that a bit. They supported the jabs. They supported no jab, no job. They support escalating war in Ukraine. They're now supporting military action in the Red Sea and so on. We're against all of those. So we are not for coerced injections. I'm against them, you know, entirely. I don't even call them vaccines, as I said. We're the only, if you like, right-wing party that is anti-war. You know, we're not a neocon party that is beholden to the American military-industrial complex. We are for this country and the people of this country and putting our nation and our interests first, you know. And it means that we don't get involved and entangled in conflicts which don't involve us, you know, and we end up spending billions and billions of pounds and killing hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, and cause new migration crises, which go against the very thing that everybody else says they're against, which is mass immigration. So, you know, their position doesn't make any sense. And you also mentioned Reclaim. You know, I think Reclaim has two members. Well, now one member. You know, I would say it was Lawrence Fox and Andrew Bridgen, but Andrew Bridgen.
It went well. It went well, that didn't it? When Andrew Bridgen was a member for all of 3 minutes and then just bailed out. I wonder what that's about. Anyway, yes, a bit murky, but anyway, allegedly, she says very quickly. And I wanted to ask you, David, how did you get started? Why politics for you? How did you get started?
Well, I mean, I was a chemistry teacher for 20 years or so, I went to university in St Andrews, did chemistry, and I did teacher training. And then that's what I did as a career. But, I got involved in politics, as I said, about 10 years ago, because I was increasingly concerned about things that were happening. As I said before, the EU, TTIP, this big contract that they were going to do, which was going to take away democracy, and how, political correctness now I'm more call it cultural Marxism, because I've looked into it, and that is something that I think people need to be aware of, and how it is affecting every aspect of our society. And although I've always been interested in current affairs and politics, but yeah, I got involved, and I joined UKIP back in the day, and I stood for Parliament the first time in 2015, and then I stood for the London Assembly, and remarkably, I was second on the list and got on, and that was incredible. That was just, the doors opened for me. So, I thank God for that. And I spent 5 years then questioning Sadiq Khan in the London Assembly, which was a very good thing to do, because there's an awful lot to question. And, clips of me questioning him on grooming gangs, on transgenderism, and, vaccines as well, injections, lockdowns, are still there for people to see. So that's why I got involved. But I thought, at the time, about 2020, there was no real old traditional kind of conservative party that, the majority of the country would agree with, that just has common sense principles that are going to build things up rather than knock things down. So I started the Heritage Party and wrote the manifesto, registered us, and then we went from there. So I'm so glad I did that 4 years ago.
Did you when you were in teaching, did you see a change? Did you see something in the education system then that made your sort of like rang the alarm bells, got the alarm bell back then? Was there something shifting then, do you think?
Look, I started teaching in the mid-90s, and I guess the last teaching job I did was 2016. And I spent a lot of time using my job and career to travel abroad. So I taught in Bosnia and Botswana, America, Bermuda, other places. And that was wonderful. But, as time goes on, there's more regulations, more restrictions. You become less free to do what you used to do before. I mean, in the 1990s, I used to, have a bit of a joke with the sixth formers and so on, but you do that now, you might get, dragged before a disciplinary committee for saying something inappropriate. And, I mean, it's crazy. Sort of the whole transgenderism and thing was starting to come in, at the end of my last teaching job. But, now, 7 years later, it's just ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in your face. And, if I went back to teach again, I probably would get thrown out within an hour, because someone would say, oh, I'm a girl. And I'd say, don't be ridiculous. You're not a girl, you're a boy. And they sort of like,
or like I'm a cat. It's like, isn't it? There are people now that kids that say, I'm a cat, so please treat me appropriately. Or what you're meant to like put carve a little hole at the bottom of the classroom door, like a cat flap, and like a bowl of food. I mean, it's kind of that's how crazy it is, isn't it? Just before we just carry on, I think we've got time for one last clip, and this is to do with the WEF. Well, we've got you for a little bit more, so I just want to play the second clip for David, which is Tony Blair. Ugh.
In the end, you need the data. You need to know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. Some of the vaccines that will come on down the line will be multiple. There'll be multiple shots. So you've got to have, for reasons to do with the healthcare more generally, but certainly for a pandemic or for vaccines, you've got to have a proper digital infrastructure. And many countries don't have that. In fact, most countries don't have that.
Thank you, you evil bastard. Not you, David. Tony Blair. So what do we think? That's him at the WEF last year, basically saying everyone's medical records were going to be digitized, and actually that the medical experiments, the injections were going to be compulsory. What do we think of him? What do you think of WEF? What are your views?
Oh, I think most people, when they see Tony Blair, he makes their skin crawl, doesn't he? I mean, he's just so, there's something so evil about him, I think, and not just him, but what he's actually trying to do. And, talking about collecting everybody's medical records, getting everyone injected with experimental mRNA multiple times. And then this leads into the whole fourth industrial revolution, the whole big data scenario where everyone will be monitored and surveilled all the time. The government, the central bank will know everything about you, everything about your medical records, everything about your financial transactions, and then they will be able to control you and manipulate you and direct you into a certain way. So this is all about the elites, the global elites, bringing in a total surveillance and control system onto everybody in the world. And this is all part of Agenda 2030. It's part of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's no secret. It's out there in the open. It's out there for everyone to read. I mean, even the UK government has got papers they published about the fourth industrial revolution and digital ID and central bank digital currency. So they're planning this, and they're all off on a jolly in Davos this week but it's not jolly because they're actually going to be advancing their plans and making strategies to implement all of those things that Tony Blair there and other people are saying that they want to do. So, we need to stand up and resist this.
Yeah, and 100%. And it's very sinister, as you say, and it is a sort of long march through the institutions, isn't it? We're seeing a sort of global, a sort of cuddly communism, which Tony Blair is absolutely 100% behind. Which is, we haven't got a lot of time, that much time left, David. But I could literally talk to you. I mean, as you know, we could talk all day. But I've got someone in my ear. I've got an Australian voice in my ear going, "Abby, come on, pack it in. It's been long enough now, love." Or something like that. But anyway, David, it's been an absolute pleasure. Do come back on. In fact, we've had a comment on the chat saying you'd make a great TNT host. So
marvelous.
Watch this space.
To join you. Yes.
God bless you, and God bless Heritage, David, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm a huge fan.
Thanks,
Thank
Abby.
you.
God bless you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bless you.